Alexander read Roman Dimitri's invitation about a new aura system and felt furious. The letter announced that Roman would reveal that the aura emission method developed by Emperor Kronos Alexander had been flawed from the start, that he would redefine the aura system and set a new direction for swordsmanship, and invited everyone to attend and witness the event. After reading it, Alexander burned the letter in anger. Aura was Alexander's weak point. If he had not been an ignorant man but a true martial master who had truly lived in the martial world, his life would have been very different. He shouted at Roman, asking if Roman really believed Alexander's achievements were so small and worthless that he could claim they were flawed from the foundation, and felt a wave of inferiority, rage, and envy that words could not hold. He then snapped that he would watch Roman's demonstration with his eyes wide open. At the Swordsmanship Association of the Salamander continent, people said Roman Dimitri dared to deny Emperor Alexander's achievements, and had even invited everyone to a public presentation as if mocking all swordsmen on the continent. Some wondered what Roman was thinking in holding such a presentation. Others called it a direct challenge to all aura swordsmen. Sergei, head of the association, said he would personally test the martial art through possession, warning that if such heresy were allowed, soon there would be no place left for them, and that if they found the slightest flaw, they must destroy Roman's reputation and silence his nonsense forever. Nearly every nation except Dimitri felt the same. Dimitri's vassal Baron Conrad said the whole continent was in uproar and that there was no need to persuade people now. If the demonstration truly redefined aura and the knowledge leaked out, the consequences could be catastrophic. Another vassal agreed that Dimitri's unique techniques should not be shared with outsiders. As his vassals argued, Roman stayed silent and remembered his past life. Namgang Jinshin had once been hailed as the greatest prodigy in Namgang history, and had even witnessed the fall of the Orthodox Murim. Still, the Namgang clan sword, long proud of being the strongest, had been shattered by Baek Jung-hyeok, and that humiliation burned in Jinshin's mind. He believed in the saying, "Know your enemy and know yourself, and you will never be defeated." So he wanted to understand the demonic cult fully, and thought that mastering the Heavenly Demon's martial arts would let him reach the same heights. 1 year passed, then 2, and finally 10 years passed before he realized the demonic cult's martial arts were not special. It was simply that Baek Jung-hyeok himself was extraordinary. In frustration, Namgang Jinshin had asked Baek Jung-hyeok why he revealed those martial arts after Jinshin had struggled for 10 years and still could not come close to him. Baek Jung-hyeok admitted that it was his intent. Baek Jung-hyeok said he wanted those who studied his arts to feel despair, so they would always remember their defeat and remain resentful, to see how insignificant they were before his power, and to accept that in the Murim heavens there existed the Heavenly Demon cult and Baek Jung-hyeok himself. After that, until the Heavenly Demon died, no one in the martial world dared to rebel again. Roman said that what he intended to reveal at the swordsmanship presentation was only the foundational principle, that he would redefine aura and take the fame Alexander had built, and that he would carve the name Dimitri into history so latecomers would never surpass them, and would only know fragments, while the full truth belonged to Dimitri alone. He told his vassals not to fear exposure, promising they would reshape the balance of power entirely. A few days later, at Dimitri Castle's presentation area, King Umberto of Drake said he still could not understand Lord Dimitri's reasoning, and asked why Dimitri would invite even the Kronos Empire if he had developed a technique far superior to the old system. Edwin Hector replied that Lord Roman might see the new aura system as information worth sharing, and that because Roman had the nature of a conqueror king, if he stole the title of first pioneer from Alexander through this presentation, Dimitri would no longer be seen as a remote province, but as the land that produced the one who redefined the entire aura system. At that moment, a soldier announced that Lord Roman Dimitri was entering. Roman walked into the presentation area with calm confidence and stated that Alexander's method of aura emission was flawed. Alexander had claimed that releasing mana and using its explosive force could create a strong aura, but Roman said this method was extremely inefficient because uncontrolled mana was chaotic, and chaos could never bring efficiency. Roman then asked the audience why no one had ever questioned Alexander's method. It was because he had been the first pioneer, and everyone had followed his system as if it were an unquestionable truth. Hearing this, Sergei clenched his fist and gritted his teeth in anger as Roman openly criticized Lord Alexander. Roman went on to explain that aura and magic were not so different. In magic, mana was gathered into a circle, refined, and then used to create spells, so he wondered why no one had thought of storing aura in a similar circular system. Edwin Hector was surprised at the idea of treating aura like a magic circle. Roman began to release his aura and said that what he was about to show was not reckless energy release but a controlled method using a storage space called the energy core, similar to a magic circle. Sergei watched in shock as Roman's aura rose smoothly and steadily along his sword. The aura moved calmly up the blade without turbulence. A large rock was brought for the demonstration, and Roman casually swung his sword, cutting the rock cleanly in half. He explained that just as releasing mana from a storage space was called magic, the act of releasing mana from the energy core should be called martial arts. He then sliced the rock into smaller pieces, leaving everyone astonished. Roman declared that martial arts drew power from the energy core, and no matter how people denied it, a revolution in swordsmanship that would destroy the old order had already begun. Finishing his presentation, Roman invited questions from the audience. Sergei, the chairman of the Swordsmanship Society, raised his hand and introduced himself, praising Roman's theory. He said that using the energy core as a vessel to store mana like mages did was an excellent idea, but there was a problem. Mana flowed freely, so how could it be guided and contained within the energy core? He added that even the circles near the heart, which was full of life energy, required long activation times, making the process too slow for swordsmanship. Without solving those issues, the theory would remain only a fantasy. Roman ignored Sergei's provocation and explained that the problem was solved once one understood why he had chosen the energy core as mana's storage center. When mana flowed through the body, it stayed briefly at certain points. The first energy core was in the brain, the second in the heart, and the third below the navel. The upper and middle cores were unsuitable for long-term storage, but the lower core was different. He said he had conducted experiments proving the stability of storing mana in the lower energy core. Sergei became uneasy and suggested that instead of rejecting Alexander's method, they could combine it with Roman's to increase its explosive power. He believed merging both techniques might create better results, but Roman arrogantly replied that Sergei's entire idea was wrong. Once the energy core formed, mana could be perfectly controlled, and there was no longer any need for wild bursts of power. Even without uncontrolled energy release, one could produce a stronger aura, unlike mages who expelled mana outward. Swordsmen circulated it throughout their bodies, so they required larger mana reserves. That was why Roman declared Alexander's theory was fundamentally flawed. This time, Sergei could not stay calm. He jumped up and shouted, asking why Roman had made his theory public and why he had involved the Kronos Empire, which was currently hostile to the Dimitri dukedom. He accused Roman of having hidden motives. Roman laughed and said there was no secret reason. The Kronos Empire had been sending spies to steal Dimitri's techniques repeatedly, so he had organized this event to save them the effort. He said he hoped every nation except Dimitri would accept this new system and use it to grow stronger. Hearing this, Chris felt his heart pound with excitement. What began as a faint tremor became an overwhelming surge of pride. The man he served was someone who guided the world by his own beliefs. Chris thought that if anyone could surpass Roman Dimitri, that person would surely become the strongest on the continent. Roman then announced that his presentation was over. Meanwhile, in the Kronos Empire, Alexander pondered the new aura system that stored energy in the energy core. If aura could truly be used like a magic circle, its potential was limitless. He remembered someone from his past life who had mocked martial arts as nothing more than using the body's inner energy. That man had looked shabby and spoken in a scornful tone, yet he had never mentioned the concept of the energy core. Alexander regretted wasting time on useless aura theories. Now that Roman had connected martial arts and the energy core, Alexander believed he must be a top martial artist from Murim, and wondered which sect he belonged to. The 9 great sects, the Unorthodox Alliance, or the Heavenly Demon Divine Cult. Alexander wondered if he, having no ties to the Murim, could truly uncover Roman's real origins. Then he decided it did not matter. Whatever Roman had been in his past life on the Salamander continent, he was now just an insignificant figure. Alexander, known as the man who creates something from nothing, declared that he would prove what results could come from even a fragment of the knowledge Roman had revealed. He summoned Mystic and ordered him to command the spies infiltrating the Dimitri dukedom to use any means necessary to discover every detail of Dimitri's martial arts. Soon an aura revolution began. Roman's presentation shocked the continent. People everywhere wondered what would happen to the existing aura swordsmen. Those who adapted would survive, those who did not would be left behind. Even the ranking system was thrown into chaos. Many began to question Roman's intentions. Why would he reveal such an incredible secret so freely? At a bar, one man said it didn't matter why Roman did it. What mattered was that the balance of power was shifting toward the Dimitri dukedom. Anyone who didn't want to fall behind had to go there. From that day on, Dimitri was no longer seen as a remote backwater but as the holy land of swordsmen. The continent's 2 dominant powers, once stable and unshakable, began to fracture, creating a 3-way struggle for dominance. The scene shifted to a man holding a communicator, Scott, a spy for the Kronos Empire. He asked through the device if stealing Dimitri's martial arts was still the right mission under Kronos' orders, given the current situation. Roman, he thought, defied all logic. Not only did he ignore the presence of spies, he even exposed the very information they tried to steal. Scott decided to stay in the Dimitri dukedom and observe. If Dimitri truly had the power to bring down Kronos, he would need to find a way to get his family out of Kronos before it was too late. Later, Chris congratulated the new soldiers for becoming part of Lord Roman Dimitri's private forces. He explained that they had to follow certain steps to officially register as regular members. When Scott's number, 98, was called, he entered the tent. The clerk asked him to sit and confirmed his details. He was 38 years old, registered as Scott from the Kingdom of Umberto. Scott confirmed this. The clerk then explained that being part of Lord Roman's direct unit was a special position, offering a monthly wage of 30 silver coins and extra wartime allowances for dangerous missions. The clerk then asked about his family, and Scott said he had a wife and a son who lived in the Kronos Empire. The clerk noted that this matched their records, and Scott grew tense, fearing discovery. The clerk quickly reassured him that the question was simply procedural and added that if Scott were to die in a mission, his family would receive compensation and he would be honored as a hero. Stunned, Scott asked if having family in Kronos was a problem. The clerk smiled and told him it was not. After leaving the tent, Scott thought that as long as he caused no trouble, no one here cared about his past. The scene then moved to the Dimitri workshop. Master Blacksmith Hendrik examined Scott and remarked that he looked like a former mercenary and was in good shape. He pointed out small details. Scott's legs were slightly uneven and his pinky fingers were shorter, which could make gripping heavy weapons awkward. Scott was surprised by how keenly Hendrik noticed such things. Hendrik explained that as a private soldier of young Master Roman, Scott's gear would be custom-made. Shocked, Scott asked if every soldier received personalized weapons, noting that it must cost a fortune. Hendrik replied that Roman soldiers were special. Since the young master always fought on the front lines, proper preparation could greatly increase a soldier's survival chances. Scott wondered if this care was because he was part of Roman's direct forces. Hendrik promised to craft him the best weapon possible. Training for the new private soldiers soon began. Chris warned the recruits that carrying 40 kilograms of gear didn't mean they could move slowly. Stamina was directly tied to survival. He said it was better to fall after giving everything than to live without trying, assuring them that Dimitri would support them. Scott thought this was ordinary training but was surprised to see Roman himself training alongside them at the front. Another soldier, Hunt, approached Scott and said that most commanders stayed behind and shouted orders, but their lord was different. He always led from the front. If they couldn't keep up with him, they didn't deserve to follow him into battle. Scott wondered if Roman was slowing his pace for their sake. Hunt urged him to give it his all, saying this was only the beginning. The intense training lasted until afternoon. Exhausted and out of breath, Scott thought it was dangerous. As they marched back, one of the guards collapsed from fatigue. Scott was horrified to see a comrade fall, and he watched as one of Roman's private soldiers hoisted the man onto his back and ordered Hunt to grab the pack. Watching Roman's guards carry the injured away, Scott wondered if they were all monsters. On the 10th day, Chris announced that no one had dropped out and that they would begin the next phase, inner energy cultivation. He asked what the energy core was, then explained the training method. But Scott thought they were finally going to learn Dimitri's secret strength until Chris cut the theory short and said the martial technique they would train was called the Asura cultivation technique. All the private soldiers, Scott included, grew excited and sat cross-legged to focus on sensing energy, which they called resonance. But after an hour and then 2 hours, Scott still could not feel any mana and began to despair, convinced he had no talent. He remembered how as a mercenary training to become an aura swordsman he had tried every method, but he knew some fields never open without talent. 3 hours passed and suddenly he felt a stir he could hardly believe. He felt warmth and coolness at times, and an energy that tickled his skin, and he thought that if someone like him with no talent could feel mana in 3 hours, then Roman truly deserved to be called the creator of aura, and that the Asura cultivation technique was powerful enough that if he delivered it to the Kronos Empire he would be rewarded and his family's safety would be guaranteed. Though he wondered if that would be enough to fulfill his duty. Chris instructed the soldiers to continue training in the Asura cultivation technique for now and said that anyone who showed rapid growth or outstanding merit would be taught a new martial art suited to their potential. When a soldier asked why they would need a new martial art since Asura was already incredible, Chris gave him a hard look and told him the question was flawed, explaining that in Dimitri the Asura cultivation technique was only a basic level art for beginners. Torn, Scott thought about whether to report what he knew or not. With the transmitter on his wrist, he asked himself whether he should carry out his mission as a spy or remain a private soldier of Dimitri. And he remembered many aura swordsmen saying they had had no aura talent but felt aura in less than a day thanks to Dimitri's training. So he concluded that soon Dimitri would have thousands, even tens of thousands of aura swordsmen and would likely surpass the Kronos Empire. And he reasoned that Kronos would discard him at the first mistake while Dimitri would never abandon him or his family. He decided he wanted to remain among people like them. He secretly called a man named Pike and told him to help his family escape from Kronos and flee to Dimitri, saying he would risk his life for Dimitri's future and asking Pike to come over and start anew in Dimitri when his work was done. Someone then called his name and he startled. It was Chris, who congratulated him on officially becoming a member of Dimitri, because Chris had been listening to his conversation and thought that as of that day, things would change and the spies who had learned the Azure cultivation technique would stand at a crossroads and choose their own futures. Later, someone knocked on Chris's office door and entered. It was Fred, the former captain of the Memphis Night Order, and Chris asked what brought him there. Fred answered that it was not too late and he asked if he could serve Dimitri. Fred's story was complicated. He had been one of the Emperor's men from the Kronos Empire sent to serve Marquis Memphis and then assigned to join Dimitri's private army. But after experiencing Dimitri's strength and seeing how Chris treated people with sincerity, he wanted to live for Dimitri instead, even though the decision might cost him his life. He said his wife and child were still being held hostage in Kronos and begged Chris either to take him and his family under Dimitri's protection or send him back to Kronos, promising that even if he returned he would never reveal Dimitri's secrets. Chris calmly told Fred that if he truly wished to become one of Dimitri's people, he must answer the next questions honestly, because there had been reports that the Emperor of Kronos used mental restraints to control his subjects. Chris asked whether Fred had ever experienced memory loss or a sense of something foreign in his mind. Fred, who flashed back to his wife asking if he had been more forgetful lately, and remembering that he had brushed it off as tiredness, admitted in shock that he had experienced such symptoms. Chris then led him downstairs to a glowing door and into a place Fred had never seen, explaining that it was the House Sect, Dimitri's intelligence organization, where a crowd of operatives was at work, and he reassured Fred that the place was not easily compromised, and that if Fred swore loyalty to Dimitri, the house sect would move to rescue his family because they had already bribed key people and located where his family was being held and were prepared to act depending on his decision. He explained that people like Fred, those under mental restraint, would go through a month of anti-AGIC training to cut all ties to the restraint. Fred asked why they would take such a risk to accept him, and Chris replied that Fred's loyalty to Dimitri made the risk worthwhile. Once he swore allegiance, Dimitri would never abandon him. After Chris spoke, Fred knelt and pledged that from that moment he would dedicate everything he had to Dimitri. The scene moved to someone training with a sword using the Asura cultivation technique. He stopped, stared at his blade, and thought that the answer he had been seeking had been in Dimitri all along. He explained that the Asura cultivation technique solved the problem of mana control by defining many channels to store energy in the energy core, and he wondered how such a perfect theory could exist. Some might doubt Roman's motives for revealing the energy core concept publicly, but for Dimitri, who already used Asura cultivation as a foundation, it posed no risk. He asked what kind of being Roman Dimitri truly was, smiled, and decided that as long as he could learn something he would stay with Dimitri. The scene then moved to the Kronos Empire, where Marquis Memphis reported to the king that none of the spies sent to Dimitri was answering, and that they had likely defected to Dimitri. The king became enraged, declared that those worthless insects had chosen Dimitri, and ordered the termination of all agents assigned to Dimitri. As Alexander left, he thought the chains linking the fragments had been cut. Whatever caused it, he had not predicted this. He believed the Millennium Grand Plan would be completed within a year, that the World Tree's power was weakening while the energy of darkness grew stronger, and that Roman Dimitri's resistance would not change the future. Around that time, 3 guests visited Dimitri. The first was Hoffman, president of the Golden Bank, who told Roman that even Valhalla had tried to avoid conflict with Kronos and that Dimitri had not received war reparations. Hoffman said Dimitri's actions were astonishing and suggested Dimitri could become a new power. He proposed that if the Golden Bank backed Dimitri, things would go more smoothly, and he offered one condition. Dimitri must not exclude the Golden Bank from his future. In return, they would lend 1 million gold interest-free, as some small states could not imagine. Roman listened, then asked if Hoffman planned to balance between Kronos and Dimitri, reminding him that the Golden Bank had loudly supported Kronos during the Redford incident, and that those plans must have come from Hoffman as bank president. Hoffman said he was disappointed but preferred to talk about Dimitri's future rather than past scandals, arguing that with the Golden Bank as a partner, Dimitri could secure 1 million gold simply by promising to include them. Roman's answer was a cold refusal, which stunned Hoffman. Angry, Hoffman said the Golden Bank was a neutral kingmaker and asked why Roman would reject such advantage. Roman said a relationship with the bank was unnecessary and that Hoffman had never been to his taste. Hoffman flew into a rage, warned that the Golden Bank would remember, and left. Roman then released his power, stopped Hoffman, and told him he seemed mistaken. Hoffman began to sweat when Roman asked if he thought he could show hostility and walk away alive. Hoffman protested, saying he was Hoffman, president of the Golden Bank, and that if he died the bank would not stand idle. Roman asked if that mattered to him, and reminded Hoffman of his fearsome reputation on the continent. Hoffman, thinking of Roman's nickname, the Devil of the Battlefield, begged that he had misspoken. Roman took the contract from Hoffman, burned it with his power, and offered a counter-proposal. He set the price of Hoffman's life at 1 million gold, and that was the only deal they could make. Hoffman accepted. A few hours later, the second guest, Edwin Hector, arrived and asked Roman about the upper energy core. He outlined his reasoning. Roman had described the brain as the upper energy core, the heart as the middle energy core where a mage forms a circle, and the area below the navel as the lower energy core, a vessel for mana. Hector asked if the lower core was optimized for how aura swordsmen store and use mana, then what purpose the upper core served. And he said that unlocking that secret could start a magic revolution. Roman watched and thought Hector's intent was blunt and surprisingly straightforward, and he felt pleased. Roman replied that being allies within the Kingdom Alliance was not enough reason to reveal the secrets of the upper energy core. Hector admitted his request was bold and said sharing information without compensation would be a one-sided sacrifice for Dimitri. He offered real applicable results as payment, promising that the Heavenly Palace's magic tower and he would investigate and try to crack the secret. He asked if they had not seen the mage from the Kronos Empire suffer and said that the Kingdom Alliance needed power to oppose him. He confidently declared that Hector would be that power. Roman then asked if Edwin thought the Phoenix Mage Tower in Dimitri could not help reveal the secret of the upper energy core. Edwin replied that he did not think so, but if the Phoenix Mage Tower joined their research, he would welcome it. He added that he did not want exclusive control, only a result that satisfied everyone. Roman then told him to come along because he had something to show him. They went to meet Felix, the master of the Phoenix Mage Tower. Felix greeted Roman respectfully and asked what brought him there. When he saw Edwin Hector from the Heavenly Palace's magic tower, he mentioned that he had heard about Edwin's enlightenment and advancement to the 5th circle after entering the Heavenly Palace, and congratulated him. Edwin politely said he was flattered. Roman then asked Felix to summon Nox and prepare the magic arena equipment. They entered what looked like a training area for mages with 2 targets in front of them. Edwin wondered why they were suddenly there, but Roman told him that the place had several layers of defensive wards and asked him to use his highest level magic without holding back. Surprised, Edwin thought he did not know what Roman was planning but decided to prove his worth. He faced the wooden target, prepared his spell and created a massive ball of thunder mana. He cast a fifth circle thunder cannon that destroyed the target. Though tired, he was satisfied with the result, thinking the power was enough. Then Roman told his mage Nox that it was his turn. Nox calmly formed 2 fire spheres at once. Edwin was shocked, realizing that Nox was casting multiple high-level spells simultaneously without memorization. Casting 2 fifth circle spells at that speed was thought to be impossible. Nox then used a fifth circle fire cannon, obliterating his target with immense power. Roman looked at Edwin and explained that Dimitri had already applied the theory of the upper energy core to practical magic. The upper energy core was indeed the key to a magical revolution. When mana passed through the middle energy core and burst from the upper energy core, the spell became far more powerful. The casting speed also increased so much that it seemed the preparation step was skipped entirely. This innovation made spellcasting 2 to 3 times faster, and even within the same magic circle the performance difference was overwhelming. Stunned by Nox's power, Edwin realized that this was the result of integrating the upper energy core into magic. He thought that if this secret became known, not just curious mages but entire magic towers across the continent would rush to Dimitri. Roman told him that as he could see, Dimitri had no reason to share the upper energy core with Hector. Edwin nodded, feeling disappointed and knowing he no longer had a reason to persuade him. Roman then added a condition. If the kingdom of Hector swore an oath of fealty, a master-vassal bond, Dimitri would not only share knowledge of the upper energy core but also take responsibility for Hector's future. Edwin wondered what such a bond would mean. Roman reflected that Edwin Hector had always been a remarkable man, bold in his decisions, capable of decisive action, and skilled as a war mage who fought on the front lines. He thought that a commander who led from the front was a valuable asset on any battlefield. Remembering his past life, Roman thought that believing one person could control everything was arrogance, and true wisdom lay in accepting others who could fill one's weaknesses. As Edwin considered the offer, memories surfaced in his mind. He remembered that his heart had never known peace. From his youth until he became known as Hector's Star, he had carried endless burdens to protect his small, fragile kingdom. In that harsh reality, all he had ever wished for was peace for Hector, and that wish had become the purpose of his life. In the present, Edwin said that if Roman Dimitri promised to secure Hector's future, he would gladly devote his life to him, and he knelt before him. That day, Dimitri gained not only the kingdom of Hector but also Edwin Hector himself. As evening fell, a third guest arrived uninvited, Marquis Valentino. He scolded Dimitri for being too extreme, saying he had tried hard not to appear like a madman but wanted to know when Dimitri would forge the new sword he had promised. While they were eating together, Valentino confessed that he had tried to be patient and wait for Dimitri to speak first. With tears in his eyes, he said that the stress had been so bad he could not even sleep and asked if Dimitri understood how he felt. Amused and slightly embarrassed, Roman thought that Valentino was truly an entertaining man. While cutting his steak, he told Valentino that he planned to craft the sword once things settled down, as there were still parts he wanted to test, and asked him to wait 1 more month. Valentino, overjoyed like a child, said that was wonderful and thanked him sincerely. The scene moves to Roman's office where his butler Hans reports that the Golden Bank has sent 1 million gold. Roman thinks that the bank has indeed kept its promise. He reasons that if they had broken a written oath sealed with their emblem, all their other contracts would lose credibility. Feeling that everything is now in order, he decides it is time to act. Since Chris is doing well in training the soldiers, Roman prepares to focus on his own work. Before leaving, he tells Hans that he will stay in the forge for about a month and that Hans should handle anything unimportant himself. Hans agrees respectfully. Roman enters his workshop, takes off his shirt, and reveals his muscular body. He reflects that forging swords has always defined who he is, even through countless hardships. It represents the height of his skill and his purpose in life. As he begins hammering the metal, the flames surround him, and he thinks about the strength he has gained in this lifetime. He wonders what kind of sword he could create if he were to forge one using the flames of a fire demon. The story then shifts to Hoffman, who is furious that Roman Dimitri dared to threaten him. He vows to make Roman regret it and to show him the cost of making an enemy of the Devil of Gold. He asks a subordinate if the information he requested has been gathered. The subordinate confirms and explains that Dimitri trades iron in large quantities with 4 major figures: Valentino from the Kingdom of Cairo, Zenith from the Kronos Empire, Muriel from the Valhalla Empire, and Vincent from the Kingdom Alliance. These 4 control 70% of Dimitri's iron distribution. He adds that Zenith from Kronos has already ended relations with Dimitri after the war. With a cruel smile, Hoffman plans to make the rest abandon Dimitri one by one so that Dimitri will be left broken and humiliated. He decides their first target will be Valentino and orders a warp gate to Cairo. He says that this revenge will begin not with Kronos or Valhalla but with betrayal from Dimitri's closest ally. At the Cairo Valentino estate, Valentino welcomes Hoffman, who greets him politely and notices another man nearby. Hoffman asks who he is, and Valentino introduces him as Count Fabius, explaining that he invited him for a discussion but could have him leave if Hoffman preferred. Hoffman says there is no need, and Valentino appreciates his understanding. Hoffman then explains that he came to talk about a matter involving Dimitri. When Valentino asks what he means, Hoffman tells him that he had a serious conflict with Roman Dimitri. Though business disputes are common, Roman had gone too far by threatening his life. With a cold, dangerous expression, Hoffman declares that the Golden Bank's relationship with Dimitri is over, and that he will stop at nothing for revenge. He adds that he came to Valentino first because he values their relationship and demands that Valentino cut all ties with Dimitri. Valentino is shocked by the request. Hoffman's tone grows darker as he offers to cancel all interest on Valentino's debts for the next 10 years if he agrees. But if Valentino refuses, the bank will collect all its loans immediately. Valentino apologizes but refuses to betray Dimitri, saying he will repay the debt as soon as possible. Hoffman warns that by rejecting his offer, Valentino will doom both himself and Dimitri. Enraged, Valentino orders him to leave at once and demands whether Hoffman will take responsibility if Dimitri refuses to sell him swords in the future. Count Fabius quietly sips his tea as Valentino tells his servants to escort the guest out politely.